The night was cold and the ruins of the battlefield were silent. A soft wind moved through broken metal and burned stone. A single human walked carefully between the wreckage. His gun was ready, his eyes sharp. Every step echoed like thunder. In the empty place, his name was Daniel, a soldier who had survived too many battles. He had seen fire rain from the sky. He had seen friends fall, he had seen enemies scream, yet now in this silence, he felt more fear than before. Because silence meant something was hiding, something alive. He raised his rifle and pointed it. At every shadow, the moonlight touched twisted iron and the smell of smoke still hung in the air. He was alone, or so he thought. Then came the sound, a whisper, soft, broken, almost too quiet to hear. His finger froze on the trigger. He turned, eyes wide. Someone was there. From behind a pile of broken armor, a figure crawled into the dim light. It was small, fragile, and trembling. Her skin glowed faintly, not like a human's. Her hair was tangled, her face covered in dirt. Her eyes, large and filled with fear, looked straight into his. "Don't shoot me." "Human," she whispered. Her voice cracked, weak but desperate. "Let me live, and I'll give you a family." Daniel's breath caught. His hands tightened around his weapon. Every instinct told him to fire. She was the enemy. She was alien. She was dangerous, but something in her voice stopped him. The alien woman dropped to her knees. She was hurt. Blood ran down her side. Her hands shook as she raised them slowly, not in attack but in surrender. Her body swayed as if she could fall at any second. Yet her eyes never left his. Daniel aimed, his heart beating loud. He had killed her kind before. He had been trained to see them as threats, nothing more. Yet why did his hand not pull the trigger? Why did those words echo inside his mind like thunder? "I'll give you a family." The battlefield was silent again. Only his breath and her trembling voice filled the air. He stepped closer, slowly. His boots crunched on broken glass. "Why should I believe you?" he asked. His voice was hard, yet beneath it was something else. Curiosity. The alien woman's lips trembled. "Because I have nothing left," she whispered. "No army, no weapons, no home." She looked at him with eyes that seemed older than her face, eyes that carried sorrow and pain. "If you kill me, I die with nothing. If you let me live, I give you everything I can." Daniel stared, his weapon still aimed, his heart still heavy. He wanted to demand more, to ask what she meant. But his mind kept replaying those words. A family, he had lost his once. The war had taken them. It had left him hollow, a soldier with no one waiting, no one calling his name. And now here, in the ruins, an alien enemy whispered the one word he never expected to hear again. He lowered the gun slightly, just slightly, enough to see her flinch as if she thought he would fire. His eyes narrowed. "If you're lying, I'll end you right here," he said, his tone sharp, but his finger eased away from the trigger. The alien woman bowed her head. A tear slid down her cheek, glowing faintly in the moonlight. "I am not lying," she whispered. "Please, let me live." For the first time that night, Daniel felt the silence change. It was no longer empty. It was heavy, filled with something new. Not the sound of war, not the fear of death, but the weight of a choice. Behind him, the ruins stretched like graves. Ahead of him, the trembling figure knelt, her body weak, her voice fading, yet her words powerful enough to shake his heart. Daniel stood frozen, his breath deep, his hand shaking on the gun. In that moment, one decision would change everything. The dark pressed close around them. The night waited. The silence grew thicker. Would he kill her? Or would he lower the weapon and listen to what she had promised? The whisper echoed again in his mind, louder this time, like it came not from her mouth but from somewhere deeper. "Don't shoot me, human. Let me live and I'll give you a family." And Daniel realized the darkness was no longer outside. The true battle was inside his own heart. Daniel's gun was still pointed at her, but his hand trembled. The alien woman's whisper clung to his mind like a shadow. She had begged not for freedom, not for food, not even for mercy. She had begged for life in exchange for something far stranger, a family. The battlefield around them was cold and empty. Smoke rose in thin threads, twisted metal shone silver. Under the moon, every broken piece of ground reminded him of death. Yet in the middle of this graveyard, the alien woman looked alive only because of her will to survive. Her body was weak, her skin pale, her wounds bleeding slowly. Still she lifted her eyes and her gaze pierced through him. Daniel finally spoke. His voice was low, harsh, but unsteady. "Explain," he demanded. "What do you mean? A family?" The alien woman's lips parted. Her voice came out like a breath carried by the wind. "My kind. We bond differently," she whispered. "When we choose. It is for life." She shivered, hugging her arms around her thin body. "I have lost everything. My people would see me dead. I have no place among them. But if you let me live, I will give myself to you. And more, I will give you something. Your kind values a family." The words made Daniel's chest tighten. He almost scoffed, almost laughed at the absurdity. An alien woman offering such a thing. Was this a trick? Was she buying her life with a lie? Or was this desperation so deep it carved honesty into every word? He stepped closer, the rifle steady, in his hands. "Why me?" he asked, his eyes sharp. "You don't know me. I could kill you now. Why risk speaking to me like this?" She raised her head slowly. Her eyes glistened in the moonlight. "Because you did not shoot when you saw me," she whispered. "That hesitation means you are not like the others. It means you still feel. I saw it in your eyes. I felt it in your silence." Her voice trembled, but each word cut through him. Daniel's breath grew heavy. His finger brushed the trigger again. But still he could not fire. Something in her tone, something in her brokenness forced him to listen. "Family," he repeated. The word was bitter on his tongue, a word he had not spoken aloud in years. Memories flashed before his eyes. A warm home, a child's laughter, the smile of a woman he had once called wife. All gone, taken by war, taken by the same conflict that had left this alien woman broken at his feet. He shook his head as if to clear the ghosts. "You think saying that word will change me?" he muttered. His voice was sharp, but inside something fragile stirred. Her answer was simple, soft. "Yes." Daniel froze. The single word struck him harder than any bullet. She was not begging with lies. She was not bargaining with gold or power. She was giving him the only thing she had left, herself. But was it enough? A sudden noise made him spin. His weapon aimed at the shadows, somewhere nearby. Metal shifted. A faint clatter echoed in the ruins. He scanned the darkness, his body tense. Was it soldiers? Was it beasts? Was it more of her kind searching for survivors? The alien woman flinched. Fear crossed her face. She crawled closer to him without thinking. Her hands pressed against the dirt, her breathing sharp. She looked at him with desperation that was more than fear of death. It was the fear of losing, the only chance she had. Daniel looked down at her. His heart pounded. He should push her away. He should treat her as an enemy. Yet when she whispered again, his grip on the rifle weakened. "Please, I have nothing but this promise. I will give you my loyalty, my bond, my life. I cannot fight you. I cannot run. All I can do is offer myself. If you let me live, I will belong to you. You will never be alone again." Her words painted a picture. Inside his mind, he imagined walking through war without silence at his side. He imagined a voice whispering in the night, not of battle, but of belonging. He imagined not dying nameless, but dying known, remembered, perhaps even loved. The thought shook him. He tightened his jaw. "And if I refuse?" he asked. His voice was sharp, though inside it wavered. She lowered her head. Her thin shoulders trembled. "Then kill me now," she whispered. "I cannot go back. I cannot live alone. Either I live with you, or I die here." The silence after her words was heavier than the ruins. Daniel stood frozen. His breath came slow. His mind screamed at him to end this, yet his heart held him back. For the first time in years, someone had spoken to him not as a soldier, not as a killer, but as a man. She had not offered him orders, not strategy, not even surrender. She had offered him something the war had stolen long ago: a family. Daniel lowered his rifle just slightly, his eyes locked on hers. He had not decided yet, but one thing was clear. This strange bargain had already begun. The ruins were still alive with danger. Daniel could hear distant echoes of metal shifting, the low growl of engines, the sound of voices too far to catch but close enough to warn him. He knew soldiers would sweep this place soon. If they found him with an alien woman in his arms, they would not ask questions, they would shoot first. He looked down at her trembling form. Her breaths were shallow, her blood dark against the dirt. She was not going to survive the night here, not without shelter, not without someone to carry her. Daniel cursed under his breath and made his choice. He slung his rifle over his shoulder and bent down. His arm slid beneath her fragile body. She gasped softly, but did not fight him. Her hands clutched weakly at his jacket, her head pressed. Against his chest, her skin was warm, feverish, her body light. Too light. She weighed less than a child. Daniel realized she had not eaten in days, maybe longer. Her weakness was not just from wounds, it was from hunger, exhaustion, despair. He moved quickly, boots crunching on, broken glass and burnt soil. He knew of a place nearby, a forgotten shelter built during the early days of the war. It was hidden beneath collapsed stone, invisible to drones unless one knew where to look. Few remembered it existed, but he had used it once long ago. It was the only chance they had, the alien woman whispered as he carried her, her voice faint but filled with trust. Why are you helping me?" she asked. Her head tilted against him, her words almost lost in the wind. Daniel's jaw tightened. He wanted to say it was strategy. He wanted to say he needed answers. But what came out was softer. "Because I didn't want to watch you die like that." She closed her eyes and a faint smile touched her lips. It was not victory. It was not relief. It was something smaller, something more fragile. Hope. They reached the hidden shelter. Daniel pushed aside the broken stones that covered the entrance. Inside, the air smelled old, damp, but safe. A small chamber carved into the earth, protected by layers of rock and metal. It was dark until he lit a small lamp. Shadows danced across the walls, giving the place a ghostly feel. He laid her gently on a blanket he found in the corner. Her body shivered, her wound still bleeding. He tore a strip of cloth from his own sleeve and pressed it against her side. She winced but did not pull away. Her eyes opened slowly, glowing, faintly in the dim light. "You saved me," she whispered. Her words carried more weight than they should, as if this moment meant more than survival. Daniel shook his head. "You're not safe yet," he muttered. He checked the corners of the shelter, making sure no one had been there recently. It looked untouched, dust covering old supplies, a few sealed cans of food, enough for now. When he returned to her side, she was still watching him, her gaze sharp despite her weakness. "I told you," she whispered. "I will give you a family. That promise still stands." He frowned, his hands tightening. "You're in no shape to make promises," he said, his voice firm but his heart uneasy. Her fingers brushed his arm, barely a touch, yet enough to make him pause. "I don't make empty promises," she whispered. "My people, when we give our word, it is for life." Daniel's chest grew heavy. He turned away, staring at the flickering light on the wall. This alien woman, enemy, outcast, survivor, spoke as if her life was already tied to his. It unsettled him, and yet it also drew him in. Outside, the night grew darker. Shadows shifted over the ruins. Soldiers searched the battlefield, unaware of the human and alien hiding beneath their feet. Inside the shelter, silence wrapped around them like a cloak. But it was not empty silence. It was filled with her breathing, with his doubts, with the weight of an unspoken bond forming between them. She spoke again, her voice softer now. If you leave me here, I will die. If you keep me, I will live for you. You will never be alone again. Daniel closed his eyes. He had sworn never to let anyone close again. The war had taken too much. But sitting in that small, hidden refuge with a wounded alien whispering promises of family, he felt the walls inside him begin to crack. He should not trust her. He knew that. Yet he could not silence the part of him that wanted to. The night passed slowly, filled with the distant sound of searching patrols. Daniel sat awake, rifle across his knees, watching the alien woman sleep. Every so often she murmured in her strange tongue, her body shivering as if caught between life and death. When morning light finally crept through the cracks above, Daniel realized something. This shelter was no longer just a hiding place. It was the beginning of something dangerous, something forbidden, but also, maybe, something he had long thought lost. A secret refuge, not just of stone and earth, but of trust, of hope, of the fragile bond between a human soldier and an alien woman who had whispered the one thing he never thought he would hear again. A family. The morning light pushed weakly into the cracks of the shelter. Daniel sat against the wall with his rifle across his knees. His eyes had not closed the whole night. He watched the alien woman as she slept restlessly. Her breaths came in shallow pulls, her body trembling even in sleep. Every now and then she whispered words in her strange language, words Daniel could not understand, but they sounded like cries from old wounds. When she finally woke, her eyes opened slowly. They glowed faintly in the dim light, and for a long moment she simply stared at him as though she was surprised he was still there. Daniel stayed silent, his jaw tight. He had questions boiling inside him, questions he could no longer hold back. "Tell me," he said, his voice rough from a night without rest. "Who are you really? Why are you here alone? Why would your people want you dead?" Her lips trembled. She pulled the blanket tighter around herself. Her hands shook slightly. Not only from weakness, but from something else. Fear. "You saved me," she whispered. "So you deserve the truth." She lowered her eyes, her voice heavy. "I was not just a soldier. I was chosen to bear children for my people. That is, my kind's way. Families are not made from love, but from orders. They told me I was failing. They said I was not enough. When I refused, they called me useless. They marked me as broken. They wanted me gone." Daniel frowned, his grip on the rifle tightened. Her words cut into him deeper than he expected. "So they cast you out," he muttered, "and left you to die in the middle of war?" She nodded slowly. Her eyes glistened. "Yes, but I did not only run from their cruelty. I ran because I wanted something more. Something real. I wanted to choose. I wanted a family built by trust, not by command." Daniel's chest tightened. Her confession was strange, alien, yet painfully human. He knew what it was to lose family, but she had never even been allowed to have one. She had been treated as property, as breeding stock, stripped of dignity. And now here she was whispering of family as if it was the only dream she ever had. He turned his gaze away. The flicker of the lamp threw shadows across the stone walls. "So when you begged me not to shoot, you weren't lying," he said quietly. "You weren't just buying time." Her voice shook, but held strength. "I was not lying," she whispered. "If you had killed me, I would have welcomed it. It would have ended the shame. But you didn't. You gave me a choice no one else ever gave me. That is why I promised you a family, because you gave me life." Daniel's mind raced. He wanted to deny it, to say her words meant nothing. But in his heart, he knew they were already changing him. He remembered the night before, the silence, the whisper that had clung to him. "Don't shoot me, human. Let me live and I'll give you a family." It echoed again now, heavier than ever. Suddenly, footsteps outside shattered the fragile calm. Daniel's head snapped up. He raised his rifle, his body tensing. The alien woman gasped, fear flashing. In her eyes, the sound of boots crunched on stone above the shelter. Voices barked orders in a language that was not human. Her people, Daniel realized. They were searching, hunting. The woman's hands clutched his arm. "Please," she whispered. "If they find me, they will not just kill me. They will make me suffer. They will drag me back to the cages. I cannot go back there." Her desperation rang true. Daniel could see the terror in her eyes, not just fear of death, but fear of chains, of being forced again into the life she had escaped. Daniel crouched low, rifle aimed at the entrance. His heart pounded. He knew if they searched too closely, they would find the shelter and then both of them would be trapped. The voices faded after long, tense minutes. The sound of boots grew distant, until only silence remained again. The alien woman collapsed back against the blanket, tears in her eyes. "They will not stop," she whispered. "They will hunt me until I am gone." Daniel studied her face. He saw the brokenness there, but also the fire. She had survived this long not because she was strong, but because she refused to give up, and now she had tied her survival to him. "You are mine now," she whispered softly, barely audible. "Not because I am owned, but because I chose you." Daniel's chest tightened again. He should have pushed her away. He should have said no. But the words stuck in his throat. Instead, he felt something shift inside him, something he had buried since the day the war took his family. In that moment, he realized her past was no longer just hers. It had spilled into his own, binding them together. Her shadows had become his burden, her enemies now his problem, and the promise she whispered, that dangerous promise of family, was no longer a bargain. It was becoming reality. The shadows of her past still hunted her, but now they hunted them both. The silence did not last long. Daniel had barely lowered his rifle when he heard it again. The crunch of boots, but this time sharper, closer. The sound of voices carried through the ruins, rough and commanding. They were no longer just searching the battlefield at random. They were following a trail. The alien woman's eyes widened. Her breathing quickened. She whispered, "Hunters." Her voice trembled with fear, but her body stiffened like she was preparing for the end. "They are trackers. They will not leave until they find me." Daniel's jaw tightened. He crawled toward the small opening of the shelter, peering out through a crack in the stones. In the distance, he saw shapes moving in the pale daylight. Tall figures, armored, their strange weapons glowing with faint energy. They moved with purpose, their heads turning slowly as if smelling the air. He felt her hand on his arm, weak but insistent. "You cannot fight them." "Not alone," she whispered. Her voice cracked with worry, not just for herself but for him. Daniel gave her a hard look. "I've fought worse," he muttered, but inside he knew she was right. These hunters were different. They were trained, relentless. If they found the shelter, the battle would be short, brutal, and final. He pulled his rifle close and checked his rounds. The metal clicked softly, echoing in the small chamber. The alien woman crawled closer, her body trembling, but her eyes locked on him. "If they catch me, they will not only kill me, they will break me first. I would rather die here by your hand than be dragged back to them." Her words hit him like a strike to the chest. He stared at her, her face pale, her lips quivering, yet her eyes burned with truth. She meant it. If he chose to pull the trigger now, she would accept it. Daniel shook his head sharply. "No," he said, his voice low but firm. "If they come, I'll fight. I don't care how many there are. I won't hand you over." She blinked at him. Her lips parted as if she wanted to speak, but no words came. Instead, tears formed in her eyes. She had not expected him to choose her side, not against his own survival, not against the hunters. Outside, the footsteps grew louder. The hunters were spreading out, moving closer. Daniel could hear the faint hum of their scanners. The air itself felt heavier. The trap was closing. Daniel positioned himself near the entrance. His rifle aimed at the shadows outside, sweat dripped down his temple. His heart beat in steady rhythm. He had been here before, outnumbered, outgunned, waiting for the enemy to strike. But this time was different. This time he wasn't. fighting for orders, for flags, or for victory. He was fighting for her. The alien woman crawled to the far corner, hiding behind crates of old supplies. She hugged the blanket around her shoulders, her body still weak, yet her gaze stayed fixed on him, watching, trusting. Then it happened. A faint metallic click outside, followed by silence too deep to be natural. Daniel's eyes narrowed, his instincts screamed. He barely had time to breathe before the first hunter appeared at the entrance. Tall, armored, its weapon glowing like fire in its hands. It moved with deadly confidence, scanning the dark shelter. Its eyes glowed, locking on him instantly. Daniel fired. The rifle cracked, the bullet striking the hunter's chest. Sparks exploded, the figure staggered back but did not fall. Its armor absorbed most of the shot. It roared in its strange language, a deep guttural sound that shook the walls. More. Footsteps thundered outside. The hunters had found them. Daniel dropped low and fired again, aiming for the joints. This time the shot hit. The creature stumbled, its weapon clattering to the ground, but another replaced it instantly, rushing forward. The shelter exploded with sound. Gunfire, energy, blasts. The air filled with heat and smoke. Daniel fought with every ounce of his training, his body moving on instinct. One shot, then another, rolling, reloading. The hunters forced their way in, and the small chamber became a cage of fire. The alien woman screamed, but not in fear. In defiance, she grabbed a broken piece of metal and swung it wildly at a hunter who tried to push past Daniel. The blow was weak, but desperate. It distracted the creature long enough for Daniel to fire into its throat. Dropping it, blood, sparks, and dust filled the air. The hunters were relentless, but Daniel was too. Every bullet he fired was a vow, every strike, a promise he would not let them take her. At last, silence fell again. Smoke drifted through the cracks. The bodies of 2 hunters lay at the entrance. The others had pulled back, regrouping. They had not given up. They were waiting, preparing to strike again. Daniel leaned against the wall, his chest heaving, sweat dripping, his rifle almost empty. He wiped his face with a shaking hand. His eyes turned to her. She was still crouched in the corner, her face pale, her body trembling. But alive. She crawled to him, ignoring the pain in her side. Her hands touched his arms, her eyes filled with something he had never seen in her before. Faith. You fought for me, she whispered. You chose me. Even when death came, you stood with. Faith. Daniel met her gaze. He wanted to deny it, to say he had no choice. But the truth was clear. He had made the choice. He had stepped into the trap, not to protect himself, but to protect her. Outside, the hunters waited. But inside the shelter, something stronger had been forged, in fire, in blood, and in the shadow of death. A bond had been sealed, and Daniel knew. This was no longer just survival. This was the beginning of war between him and all who hunted her. The smoke still hung in the air of the hidden shelter. Daniel sat with his rifle across his lap, his chest rising and falling as he tried to steady his breath. The bodies of 2 hunters lay at the entrance, their armor cracked and glowing faintly. Outside, silence lingered, but it was not the silence of safety. It was the silence of waiting. The alien woman crouched beside him, her face pale, her lips trembling but her eyes fixed firmly on him. She had seen him fight. She had seen him refuse to run even when the odds were impossible. Her hand shook as she touched his arm. You risked everything for me, she whispered, her voice soft but clear. You fought when you could have abandoned me. You stayed when you could have escaped. Daniel looked at her. His face was hard, but there was no denying the truth in her words. I didn't save you for thanks, he muttered. I saved you because I couldn't watch them drag you away. She lowered her head, but a faint smile touched her lips, a smile that carried sorrow, gratitude, and something deeper. I told you before, she whispered. My people bond for life when I promised you a family. It was not just words. It was a vow. Daniel frowned. His grip on the rifle tightened. A vow, he repeated, his voice sharp. You mean this family thing? It wasn't a bargain to survive. It was real. Her eyes lifted to his, glowing faintly in the lamplight. "Yes," she said. "When you chose not to kill me, I chose you. That choice cannot be undone. I belong to you now, and you belong to me." The words sank into him like fire. He wanted to push them away, to say he didn't believe, but his chest felt heavy. His heart pounded with something he had not felt in years. He remembered his wife's smile, his child's laughter, memories stolen by war. For so long, he had carried only emptiness. Now here was an alien woman, broken and hunted, whispering the same word he had buried. Family. "Why me?" he asked quietly, his voice rough. "Why would you choose me, a soldier, a man who has killed your kind?" She did not look away, her voice steady though her body shook. "Because you hesitated. Because when I begged you not to. Shoot, you listened. Because even when death came, you fought not for yourself but for me, that is why." Daniel's throat tightened. He wanted to deny it, but he could not. She was right. Somewhere between her whisper and his trigger finger, something had shifted inside him. Outside, faint voices echoed again. The hunters had not left. They were regrouping, waiting to strike once more. Daniel loaded the last of his rounds into the rifle, the metal clicking softly in the dark. He knew they could not stay here much longer. The alien woman moved closer, her hands pressed against his, stopping him for a moment. "Listen to me," she whispered. "No matter what happens out there, my vow stands. If I die as yours. If I live to give you what I promised, a family." Her words shook him. He had heard vows before, soldiers' oaths, commands from officers, promises of war, but none of them had ever sounded like this. Soft, fragile, yet unbreakable. Daniel stared into her eyes, his voice low. "You don't even know what family means to us." Her lips trembled, but she answered, "Maybe not as your kind knows it. But I know the meaning of belonging. I know what it is to give myself fully to another. That is what I offer you." For a moment, the world outside disappeared. The hunters, the danger, the blood, all of it faded, leaving only her words, her vow, her promise. Daniel's hand slowly lowered the rifle, his chest heavy, his mind torn. He had sworn never to let anyone close again, never to feel that pain again, yet here she was, breaking through the walls he had built. The silence stretched between them. Then she leaned closer, her voice barely more than breath. "You are not alone anymore, Daniel. Not while I live." His name on her lips startled him. He had not told her, yet somehow she spoke it as if she had always known. The sound of it, spoken with such certainty, struck him deep. Daniel closed his eyes, his body weary, his heart heavy. But for the first time in years, he felt something shift inside him. Not anger, not grief, but something dangerous, something he had sworn never to feel again. Hope. Outside, the hunters moved closer. The trap was not finished. Danger was still near. But inside the shelter, another truth had been forged. The alien woman had given her vow, and whether he wanted it or not, Daniel had begun to accept it. The promise of family, whispered in the dark. The shelter felt smaller with each passing hour. Smoke from the earlier fight still lingered in the air. Daniel sat near the entrance, his rifle balanced across his knees. His body ached. His mind was tired, yet his eyes stayed sharp. Outside, the hunters were waiting, patient and silent. They had not attacked again, but Daniel knew they would. The alien woman sat across from him, her body wrapped in the blanket. Her wounds still hurt, yet her gaze never left him. She studied him quietly, as if memorizing every line of his face. Every so often, she whispered words in her language, soft, gentle, almost like prayers. Finally, Daniel broke the silence. "They'll come again," he said, his voice low, steady. "When they do, I don't know if I'll have enough to stop them." She tilted her head, her eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. "Then we cannot stay here," she whispered. "This place kept us alive for one night, but it cannot Protect us forever. He knew she was right. The shelter was only a hiding place, not a home if they stayed. The hunters would break through sooner or later, and when that happened, there would be no escape. Daniel stood and looked around. His eyes fell on the supplies, old cans of food, blankets, a broken lantern. Not much, but enough for a journey. His mind raced with possibilities. Where could they go? How far could he carry her in her weak state? And if they ran, what kind of future waited beyond the ruins? The alien woman rose slowly, leaning against the wall for support. Her body trembled, but her steps were steady. She moved closer to him, placing her hand gently on his chest, her voice soft but firm. "Wherever you go, I go," she whispered. "I chose you, and that cannot be undone. My life is yours now. My future is tied to you." Daniel's chest tightened. He looked down at her, this fragile, hunted creature who had become more than just a burden, more than just a survivor. She was a promise, one he never asked for, but one he could not ignore. "You don't understand," he muttered, his voice rough. "If I take you with me, it won't just be the hunters after us. My own people will see you as an enemy. They'll want you dead just the same." Her eyes did not waver. "Then let them come," she whispered. "I will not leave you. I told you. I will give you a family. That is not a bargain, it is a vow." Her words struck him deeper than bullets. Daniel closed his eyes. The memories of his old family came again. His wife's laughter, his child's small hands, but this time, the pain was softer, replaced by something else, something dangerous, the sound of belonging. Suddenly, a sharp cry echoed outside. The hunters were moving again. Daniel grabbed his rifle and rushed to the entrance. Through the cracks, he saw them gathering more than before, armored and armed. They were ready to strike. His heart pounded. He knew they couldn't fight them all. Not like this, not in the open. He turned back to her. "We have to move now," he said sharply. "It's our only chance." She nodded without hesitation. Her trust in him was complete. Daniel pulled aside the stones blocking the back passage of the shelter, a narrow tunnel leading deeper into the ruins. He had found it long ago, a secret path used by soldiers to escape when surrounded. Now it would be their road to freedom. He helped her through first, her body light in his arms. Together they crawled through the darkness, the sound of the hunters smashing into the shelter. Behind them, energy blasts shook the stones. Dust rained down, but the tunnel held. They emerged into the open night. The stars stretched above them, vast and endless. The ruins behind them glowed with fire as the hunters tore through the shelter. But Daniel and the alien woman were already gone. He carried her across the broken ground, his steps steady, his grip strong. Each stride pulled them farther from death, closer to something new. She clung to him, whispering softly, "You are mine, and I am yours. We are family now." The words no longer sounded strange. They no longer felt like desperation. They felt like truth. At the edge of the ruins, Daniel paused, looking back once more. The battlefield that had taken everything from him now lay in smoke and shadow, but in his arms was life, fragile but real, a reason to keep moving. He turned his gaze forward, toward the unknown lands beyond the war. The future was uncertain. Danger would follow them, but the bond they carried was stronger than fear. As dawn painted the horizon in pale light, Daniel whispered under his breath, almost to himself, "You're right. I'm not alone anymore." The alien woman lifted her head, her glowing eyes meeting his. Her lips curved into the faintest smile. "No, human," she whispered. "You are not alone. From this day, you are my family." And with those words, they stepped together into a new beginning. A path forged not by war or orders, but by choice, by trust, by a promise whispered in the dark and sealed in blood.